Yeah, now we're good. All right, so I will call the meeting to order for those who would like to join me with pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. All right, so it looks like we have a couple of adjustments here specifically, so I will make a motion to add item 8A1, which is approval of OHS and teacher.
I will second.
Any discussion? We'll do roll call because Noah is with us. Noah?
It's a little hard to hear here.
Aye.
I.
Can you hear us, Noah?
Mostly, it's a little.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, if you can't hear him, then you can't vote.
You can't hear me.
Unless you put it in the chat, okay.
I can hear Noah.
Someone, Susan's trying to talk and we can't hear her either. So it's something on our end.
But no, you can hear us, okay?
Yeah. I mean, sort of okay. I know it's a little garbly, but
We're good now.
okay.
Motion to add item 8AI1, which is approval of OHS English teacher. Noah?
I think it's like the sound is not great here. Like coming, it's
We have an AC, we'll turn it off and see if that helps.
okay.
Noah, can you hear me better?
Yeah, it's a little better.
I will start over and talk towards the owl.
Sounds good. Thanks.
I will make a motion to add item 8AI1, which is approval of OHS English teacher.
And I second.
Any discussion? Noah?
Hi.
Kevin?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
I'm aye. Okay, second agenda adjustment is remove item 8D, approval of vendor selection for ACE generator project.
I second.
Any discussion? Noah?
Hi.
Kevin?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And I'm aye. All right, so next we're on to consideration of the minutes. I will make a motion to approve the minutes of the June 18th, 2024 workshop.
I second.
Any discussion? All right, Noah,
Hi.
Kevin,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
and I'm aye. Next is I will make a motion for the approval of the June 18th, 2024 regular meeting minutes.
And I second.
Any discussion? Noah,
Hi.
Kevin,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
aye as well. And lastly, I will make a motion for the approval of the July 8th, 2024 special meeting minutes.
I second.
Any discussion? Noah,
Hi.
Kevin,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
I was not there, so I will abstain from that. All right, so it looks like we don't have any warrants to approve.
Me too, I'm sorry.
That's okay, what are they?
Oh, there's a lot. Here, I'll read them out because they're in the folder. Can I just read them out? Because there
Yeah,
are
okay.
a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so payroll and regular warrant 1. Payroll and regular warrant 2. Regular warrant 3. Warrant 26A and made hers. 6/24.
Yeah, June of
June.
20.
June of 24, and capital improvement 13. Warrant 26B, and warrant and payroll warrant 26, and capital improvement 12.
Okay,
So
I
we're crossing fiscal years with those, that's why they're wonky.
will make a motion for the approval of the warrants that Meredith just mentioned.
I second.
Any discussion? Noah,
Hi.
Kevin,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay, next we're on to public comment. Meredith, doesn't look like our planned public comment guest is on, right?
No, I'm
Okay,
not seeing the
no,
person
sorry.
who
Does
had.
anyone out there have any public comment, either online or in person, that they'd like to submit? All right, so, moving on to acknowledgements. Noah,
None at this time.
Kevin,
None of this time.
Mark?
None for me, thank you.
I will make an acknowledgement. Looks like Dollar Tree is collecting and donating school supplies to RSU 26, so thank you to Dollar Tree. Meredith, did you have anything?
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge the staff that's been working over the summer. Lots of work happens during these weeks and months, and we're sitting in a room that just got finished being waxed last night. And our custodians, our IT department, our administrators, our administrative assistants, lots of things are happening to ready ourselves for a new school year. So I acknowledge the work of all of those individuals.
Our new facilities director.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so we're on to reports, starting with principal reports.
So, Jerry?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. It seems as though ASA has been a very busy place since we ended the school year. We've had lots going on. We've had some staffing changes. We've had some curriculum work that's been happening. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of those things from my report. First of all, Allison Woodard gave her resignation on Wednesday, July 24th. She's very excited to be moving on to a new position that she's been looking forward to. So we're very happy for her, and we thank her for her work here in the district and to the students and staff. With her vacancy, we've had some shifting going on. So Angie McLaughlin has moved into the literacy coaching and intervention position, which we are very excited about. Angie brings that background with her from her previous position, and she's very excited to get moving with that work. We were able to backfill Angie's kindergarten vacancy with Castine Berry Grant, who spent a year in 4th grade last year, but her heart is truly in the younger grades. So she was very enthusiastic to step into the kindergarten position for this coming school year. And then that allowed us to leave Mrs. Audrey Buzzle in 4th grade, which is where she was last year. She was going to bump to 5th grade initially with that large cohort that was moving forward to 5th grade, but she's ecstatic to be staying in 4th grade this year. So we are currently in the process of interviewing for the 5th grade position, which ultimately at this point looks like it will be a 1-year position as we move forward. So we have started interviews for that this week, and hopefully we will have a name for that position very, very soon, as the school year is approaching really quickly. So that's a lot of excitement with all those changing positions that everyone is very excited about. The other piece I wanted to update you quickly on is that at the end of June, the literacy leadership team met along with Susan Smith and myself to start beginning to review reading curriculum resources. We reviewed more than 8 evidence-based programs, and at this point, we're going to hopefully be moving forward with piloting from 4 different programs in the coming school year, and hopefully have a recommendation by the end of the next school year for a new reading curriculum resource. Angie McLaughlin is very excited to be helping to lead that work along with Susan Smith. So that's some exciting curriculum work coming in the year ahead. And finally, I will just give some thank yous and shout outs to, as Mrs. Higgins mentioned, all the staff that have been working this summer. They've been working so hard. The custodial staff are dying to get into the end of the building where we've been having all the new construction work happening and HVAC work. But they have the rest of the building starting to look ship shape, and they've been working so hard in this immense summer heat and humidity that we've had. So shout out to them. The office staff, Mr. Matt in the main office, he's moving right through his first season of instructional supply ordering, and things are moving right along there. He's doing a great job. And class placement letters went out today in the mail. So 319 letters are on their way to families and hopefully students that will be very excited to find out who their teacher is for the next school year. So I will leave it at that. And do you have any questions?
Anyone have any questions? All right, on to the middle school, Richard.
Good evening, everyone. As I often like to say in August, it's getting mighty quiet around here, and we need students to come back into the building and generate some excitement. But seriously, it's been a great July and very restful. But as we prepare for school, I want to acknowledge the summer school staff. We had students in the building during July, and it was nice to make those connections, especially for many students who I think where they'll benefit from that maintaining that positive connection to school for those summer weeks of summer school. So thank you to Jess Archer and all the summer school staff for a great job. I also wanted to recognize Sam Runco for her leadership this summer and in leading with the transition to the custodians. I was helping her some with that, but I really want to acknowledge her leadership there as during some time that I was away. She really stepped up there. So thank you, Sam, for that. Where preparations for the opening of school are underway, and August 28th is sixth grade step up day. And so we're planning, and we ordered t-shirts for incoming sixth graders and have some events planned to help them transition into the beginning of the school year. And as Carrie noted at ASA, we also I sort of a first blush in reaching out to parents today. I sent a letter regarding it was via school messenger regarding beginning of the year paperwork and directions for how to do that on our website. So that we're just beginning to collect that information. Our schedule for the school year has been shared out with staff, student groupings. So we're ready to hit the ground running there. As always, some minor tweaks will be necessary during the opening weeks of school, but our schedule is looking very good for this year, and we included our new classes, and so that's we're ready to go there. And our enrollment numbers we had some students move in and some students move out over the summer, but our overall enrollment is up. We're up to 155, so we're up 6-7 students from the end of the year, so that's looking good. And athletics, so we're planning athletics. I think August 20th is our first Penobscot Valley Middle League meeting to plan the fall sports season, so that's underway. And we're we're not ready yet, but we're very close, and looking forward to welcome students back in a couple of weeks.
Anyone have any questions? Brian, how are you?
Good. Sorry, I was a little late, but good to be here.
No, that's okay. We're down to the last principal report, and I'm smiling at Miss Diamond.
Well, I'll let Sam typically goes first. I don't want to mess up the routine, so.
And the Al's not going to get you, look at your voice, but not your.
Okay.
Hi,
Sure,
Meredith. Glad to hear you. So I just want to start by saying hello to everybody. I hope everyone had a great summer. Yes, it's been hot and humid, but also beautiful and sunny at times. So hope everyone had time to enjoy family, friends, relaxation, and all the good stuff that I love Maine for. So hope you all enjoyed. And I just want to say thanks to Richard for recognizing the support that he and I gave to the custodians. And I just want to say thanks again, like many have, to all the custodians and all the IT staff and everyone that's really working hard to get our schools ready. What's happening up in the high school is pretty phenomenal, and they've been working hard from get-go, and I had the privilege of seeing that firsthand. So that was a really great experience for me. And I also do want to do a shout out to Lisa at our new administrative assistant. Much like Matt, this is her first summer working alongside me to order things and see how the summer goes, and she has been phenomenal. So thank you for that. Like with other schools, like in middle school, our summer school programs were a huge success. Both the programs through the special education department, but also our geometry class. So thank you to everybody that was a part of that, students and staff alike. And our summer athletic programs are always a great way for kids to stay connected with each other, keep building on their skills, make new friends, and just have a fun, safe activity throughout the summer. So thanks to everyone who did camps or clinics or other versions of athletics throughout the summer, and to Mike Archer for helping to make that happen. This coming Sunday, August 18th, is the Fall Sports Information Night. It begins at 6 p.m. in the OPAC. And we'll be discussing the overall handbook in general to the large group, and then the individual sports will get together with their coaches, answer specific sport questions, review the handbook a little bit, and just really start the season off on a positive note, with preseason starting the following day. And our letter will be going out this Friday from the high school. It'll include schedules for the first 2 days of school, information on how to complete the paperwork on Power School, information on our dental clinic, which we're excited to have again this year, and as well as to invite them to meet some of our new staff that we introduced within that letter. Also, as far as the learning environment goes and all the work being done, I just want to do a welcome officially to Derek Sinclair. Coming in that position at this time of the year is probably pretty tough, but he's doing it with a smile and a lot of energy, and he's really doing a great job. So welcome to him as well, and thank you for his efforts right off the bat. Meredith?
Thanks, Sam. So one more detail about our summer geometry program, which, you know, a few years ago was something that didn't exist. And I just wanted to underscore the role that it has begun to play in removing obstacles for students to access both programming that otherwise would be difficult to build into their schedule, specifically UTC, by giving them a chance to earn math credit over the summer and keep space in their schedules for other options in their final 2 years. To keep track of graduation, right? If a student has a hard time with the math class because we require 4 credits, that can put them off track. So this is an opportunity to keep them on track. And it also has become a place where we can ensure that students are able to continue having 2 supported study halls in their schedule. So 1 supported study each day in their final year. So that has, you know, the fact that we had 11 students successfully complete, that's our highest so far. And that just, I feel like, is a demonstration of a sound investment on the district's part. So thank you to Heather and Heidi for making that possible. Right now, we have 3 folks who are down at the main Educator Summit's Educator Trip Leader Certification class. And this is the current effort to begin building the supports that we will need in order to have some pivots in 9th grade science programming next year. You know, we're on a different path than we anticipated at our last conversation about this, but you know, I'm grateful to those folks for being willing to, you know, put in the time and the energy. It's 2 overnights, right? It's not just you know, daytime program, to make sure that we have the pieces in place to, you know, get kids out onto the Penobscot and offer them the kind of experiential and place-based learning that resonated so deeply with us in our last discussion. And that is a pivot that will be supported in the next school year in part by Jen Franzak. Jen is our professional learning specialist with the RISE Center. And in our conversations about what her work would look like next year, you know, she mentioned how she piloted a similar program in her work in the classroom at East Grand. And she's really excited about the chance to be a thought partner to that place-based and experiential effort. And so I'm really excited that just kind of sort of fell into place, right? Because our partnership wasn't formed with that in mind. Alongside that, and this is something that I didn't put in the report, we were part of a grant proposal development this spring to the DOE for their Climate Center grant. And we collaborated on that with RSU 34 and the RISE Center. And that is a project that was open to teachers in the region, but on a timeline that was similarly fast to the state's recent timelines for spending money. And how it has come together is in a partnership between the RISE Center and Wabanaki Youth in Science. And the driving push is giving educators the opportunity to participate in an unlearning and a relearning process that weaves cultural knowledge with Western knowledge and Western pedagogy in an effort to ensure that the inclusion of Wabanaki studies isn't a footnote in a unit, to ensure that it is part of a built-in part of students' experience of learning the way that LD 291 had in mind. And Jen is a support for that program as well. We initially had two RSU 26 teachers sign up for this project, both of whom had to back out because of other circumstances. But I have been on site supporting that project this week, and I am really, really excited about being in dialogue with Wabanaki Youth in Science and the opportunity that I think is going to be available to us to bring them into work with our teachers. The frame that we're using right now is science, and in our past conversations about the Wabanaki Studies Work Group, that was an area where it felt kind of confounding. How do we de-Westernize elements of our science programming, and this is a pathway to doing that. And so I'm really excited about the possibilities that this project is revealing. I'm not going to go into detail about AP scores because that's going to be, shared in a data workshop this fall. But I just wanted to acknowledge that we had a tremendously successful season this year with respect to the performance of our students in AP classes. We had 80 students take 143 exams. In a previous report, I highlighted how many of those students tested with supports, which is evidence to the success of our promise to students that they will have the support that they need, even when that, turns into taking classes at the AP level. 90% of our AP students scored 3 or above on at least one test, which, as you can see from the graph, is the highest in the last 5 years. I don't have data, dating back before that, but, if we look at, 56% in 2021, having 90% now really is phenomenal. In addition to that, we have, moving through our system, our first cohort of AP capstone students. So if you went to the research symposium in the spring, you saw the work that many of these students have done. So far, we have 2 students that have completed the requirements for an AP capstone diploma, but that number will grow next year because many of the students who've completed the seminar research sequence will take their additional AP classes during senior year. So that is really exciting, as is the fact that, we have so many students qualifying for AP Scholar with honors and AP Scholar with distinction. This is an evolution for us. We have been increasing the conversation about, what does AP mean to our district? What does it mean to be supportive? What does it mean to welcome all while also ensuring appropriate challenge for all? And, I think that this is evidence of the work that we have been doing. Just one more quick thing that I did not mention on our report. I was asked by Meredith in the spring to serve on the town's comprehensive plan development team to represent the interests of the district. And that work has been ongoing for, I think we're in our 3rd month now. In the learning phase, getting reports out from the consultant about the state of things in over the past 10 years in Orono. And it is really exciting to hear echoed by other stakeholders in the town who aren't connected to the school, many of the same priorities that have emerged in various conversations within the district. And I am excited for the next phase of the work, which will open up to the community an opportunity to provide feedback about what the town thinks are our biggest priorities, and then to be able to come together in an effort to institutionalize those and come up with a pathway to actualizing some of those hopes and dreams. So right now we're still learning, but there's going to be more to come soon.
So I step in at this point, Jake.
Yes.
Any questions for the high school?
Actually, I have 2, but Noah has one, so Noah can certainly go first.
Yeah, I guess I just had a question, maybe to clarify, maybe you said it, but just so the sort of the Watershed Academy idea that we talked about last time, you said there's been a pivot. I guess my question is, are we still is the plan still the same direction, just slowed down, or is there a new sort of direction? And can you briefly clarify what that is? Is your question?
Yeah. My first question kind of is along the same lines. It seems to me that every time we get into this, we don't know what is being done. So if you could kind of explain a little bit about what the plan is now, that would be great. What's going to happen to students this year would be nice to know.
So maybe I can address that first, and then Noah, I'll kind of scale out. So what's gonna happen this year is is not unlike what happens in any given year in a way that we just don't necessarily talk about at this level, which is that a teacher is reflecting on practice and thinking about how, student needs are evolving and is adjusting practice in a way that feels responsive to student needs, responsive to new learning, and in keeping with our responsibility to, the learning standards that, govern us all. And so for ninth grade science, that will look like spending more time outside. The hope is to make use of the land trust land behind the track in a way that area serves as a laboratory that is accessed with more frequency, and that is more at the center of the curriculum than a classroom-based science curriculum. So there aren't significant pivots in terms of what students are going to be studying. It's more in the methodology that's being used in a way that hopefully will increase a sense of relevance, increase the experiential nature of it, and have it be more in the world and outside of the classroom. Alongside that, we have continued conversations, over the course of the year in English in particular. And, last year or actually I think it was 2 years ago at this point, we started with Morgan Talty's collection of short stories and, the fact that they were, took place on the Penobscot Nation, and that being something that we used at the beginning of English 9 for all students in an effort to, again, connect to the place and activate for some students who may not have seen themselves in our curriculum previously, to feel like they see this as relevant to them. So the hope is to continue dialogue between all the ninth grade teachers in a way that will open doors for similar conduits to be connected across the disciplines. The part that is relevant to the educator trip leading is really a continuation of the field trips on the Penobscot River with the Penobscot River Keepers, but in compliance with the requirement for educational trip leader certification. And that was something that we have done in previous years and that we just want to continue. And so that is what the work looks like in the short term. In the long term, we had hoped to have the ninth grade summer camp as proof of concept for a data-driven conversation about the framing for the Watershed Academy. And, that was a camp that we had to cancel. And so it's not that we are looking at something different, Noah. It's just that we are taking steps forward without the supportive platforms provided by that experience that we had anticipated being, part of the pathway in which we're stepping. And so to be totally honest, I'm not sure what the next phase of that conversation is going to look like in absence of those platforms, those supportive platforms. But I do know that the view of it as an important option to consider and as something that could be potentially really impactful for our students, that persists. And this is has all kind of unfolded without students in the building, without teachers in the building, and those are conversations that we really need teachers back in the building in order to continue.
Yeah, I would say that things are on pause a bit until teachers get back in the building and conversations can resume, because it was, really after as folks were leaving that we realized the summer program wasn't going to be able to happen. And so I would say that the pause button has been pushed, and we're going to resume conversations when staff return. So
this doesn't sound like the pause button was pushed, though. It sounds like we're making plans, someone's making plans to move forward without this proof of concept thing. I mean, so.
I wouldn't say that. Yeah.
Well, that's what I got from that. So, I mean, I would think that the next step would be to have the conversation to decide if this is in fact the path that we're going on. Because my recollection is we were going to use the summer programming as a kickstarting that conversation of where we wanted to go. We couldn't have the summer camp. So I don't know how we could certainly move forward with thinking and planning, but I don't know that you phrased it, this pathway that we're on. I don't know that decision, that pathway, that's the pathway we're on that made yet. So,
Well, I guess what I meant with that idea of the pathway that we're on is one that is this coming year will manifest in a teacher employing strategies that in his classroom that feel responsive to student needs. You know, and those are strategies that were talked about as a reason to consider the Watershed Academy, right? That idea of you know, being place-based, offering kids experience, moving them outside of the classroom and into the world, you know, to the extent possible. And, you know, the route that we are on right now is one where, you know, that is something that teacher can do without any sort of institutional change, right? It's well within the realm of classroom practice that, you know, we support for all teachers. And so when I use that phrase, Mark, I guess what I'm trying to say is that we are moving forward in ways that we can without making any sort of substantial change institutionally.
So,
I think in terms of the Watershed Academy and kind of to Noah's question, I think that is going to require conversation with staff once they return to find out kind of where staff see us headed and what they would like to take as next steps before we can come back to say to the board, you know, this is what, you know, staff is looking to pursue right now. Because I don't think we can answer that. We just can't.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I guess part of my question too is like, I think it always felt a little ambitious to have that starting like a year from this fall. And I'm trying to understand here whether there's been this sort of reason to think this was the wrong direction, or whether, you know, we could just delay by a year and have the test case be next summer and then just like be in the same position just for off by a year. Like, that's what I'm trying to, do you see my question?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we sent an email early summer to let you know kind of a little bit more about the circumstances of the cancellation of the summer program. And we had grant money this summer.
Oh, right.
That, you know, it kind of depends on if that grant money is available next summer, if it could be pursued in the same way. But I think, you know, all this is kind of premature to where we are in working with staff, given, you know, the change that happened in mid-June. So we need to talk with staff and really circle back when we have more information.
So would you envision that after the conversation with staff gets to a certain point that parents and or high school students would also be brought into this conversation, or are they ancillary to this?
Well, I would say at a certain point, sure, we would need to go through that process given kind of the change we're talking about, or that we were talking about. But I think the board's probably a first stop.
I mean, it does seem to me, at least from our earlier conversation, that this is a relatively large scale change that we envisioned. And I would be reluctant to kind of spring that on parents and students without at least some information sessions, but probably with an opportunity to offer feedback and ask questions too.
That makes sense.
I mean, I think there's a couple things, right? There's what's happening this fall, which you asked, Mark, and, you know, I think Meredith Diamond's point is pretty well taken. It's really just classroom changes that are within the scope of, you know, teachers do that. It may happen to be synergistic in a direction, but choosing a particular textbook, taking an earth science class more outdoors are not extreme or radical changes and well within traditional scope of teacher choice. So that to me seems like that's kind of a settled issue, or not even really a board issue. I mean, it's nice to know what's happening, but then there is this larger issue, and it just, you know, in school time, which is conversations with teachers don't happen over the summer, we aren't anywhere different than we were when we got that letter in June saying our original plan has had to be revised due to logistical personnel issues. And so I think probably kind of like Meredith saying, I think letting the teachers actually get back out of summertime and back into school time and have a conversation. And then I think really as far as the process, probably the next part of the process after the teachers is the board, and then probably at some point the community as well. So I also, you know, I'll just point out that there's a lot of this that's very much in alignment with the strategic plan. So I think this is a good opportunity for us to pause and think about, you know, and the strategic plan does ask for some pretty big, substantial maybe even radical changes. So this is a good opportunity for us to pause and think about process behind the kinds of changes mooted in the strategic plan. And this is just a kind of a nice test case that comes first or soonest because it was in progress before the strategic plan. But I think we need to recognize it's been on pause. The teachers need to have a conversation. So answers are not forthcoming for good reasons in this moment in this meeting. And they need to have the conversation. And then I think we need to think about the process, which I would agree with Meredith Higgins. The board is probably a next step as a surrogate and a place for parents to have and students, maybe some student consultation too. And then after that, there's probably a larger rollout process that's involved. Does that make sense to people?
It makes sense to me. The only thing I would add or offer as maybe an alternative would be that parents get an opportunity to be informed and provide feedback before there's a rollout of something as a done deal.
Right, which is one of the purposes of board meetings, right?
High school parents aren't gonna come to a board meeting. It's gonna have to be special outreach.
Do you remember the Muse meeting?
Yeah,
I mean,
but there was lengthy discussion of that beforehand. I doubt this will involve similar, and there was also agitation, outside agitation for that. I doubt either of these will have those.
I think the board is designed to serve as a public check-in point, and I think you know, the degree to which that's a fair chance for community check-in kind of depends on how much we publicize it, how many times we have the conversation, how much lead time notice we have. And I would agree we should be on the side of openness with giving plenty of clarity and lead time and communication about what's happening. We can talk through the details. Maybe that's a letter that goes out before a board meeting. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like, but I would agree we want to err on the side of making sure parents are not caught by surprise.
Thank you.
Any other question?
I do have a second question. Could you explain to me a little bit what you mean when you say you want to quote de-Westernize unquote science?
So in our conversations about Wabanaki studies, in the Wabanaki studies work group, we heard from a member of the work group was a person pursuing a PhD in forestry and who also is a community parent. And one of the things that, you know, because historically, Wabanaki studies in Maine has begun in social studies, right? Like the idea of it being a, you know, a historical lesson versus, you know, the Wabanaki perspective is, you know, Wabanaki people are not just history, right? We are here, we have culture, we have a political system, we have an economic system. We are as much present now as, you know, we were in history. And so, you know, history isn't really where this belongs. And when we were talking about what does it mean to do really cross-disciplinary learning about Wabanaki studies, the member of our work group highlighted how the scientific methods that we use and that we teach are actually Western scientific methods. It's not, but we don't talk about it as a method. We talk about it as the method. And she explained how for her child, her understanding of ecology that she learns as a part of being a Maliseet and a Passamaquoddy person is actually in conflict with what she learns about ecology in the classroom. And the example that she used was that in her elementary school, you know, science discussions, the natural world is identified as something that is separate from humanity. And, you know, humans are here and then the natural world is over here. And the lesson unfolds from there, right? With the assumption that, you know, humans are something that act on the natural world. And she said, you know, that's something that for my child undermines her teaching about the relationship between humans and the natural world that she has as part of her culture. And so the assertion from Wabanaki Youth in Science is that cultural knowledge that comes from a non-Western perspective belongs alongside Western knowledge and Western perspectives. And so the learning that participants in the climate grant project have been doing over the past 2 days has been a discussion about how do we get to a place as educators where we consider that the way that we have learned is actually one perspective, and that there are other perspectives that also deserve to be included. And so the work, the frame that Wabanaki Youth and Science uses and has been using in their educator cohorts, this current cohort is the 4th one, is the bringing in of cultural knowledge keepers from tribes in the Wabanaki Confederacy and partnering them with educators and building a relationship between the educator and the cultural knowledge keeper. And having the educator, which in the cohorts that exist now include educators in this region, educators in all of the tribal elementary schools, and then the most recent cohort before this one was interpretive rangers at Acadia National Park. The idea is that the educator is supported by the cultural knowledge keeper in braiding together different perspectives to then be included in the work that they're doing in classrooms. And so we haven't gotten to that point yet, so I can't speak to, specifically about what that process looks like, but what I have been told and I'm coming to understand is that it is a relationship-driven process that is unique to each educator in partnership with the cultural knowledge keeper. And in our work in the district, part of why this is so exciting is because the partnership with cultural knowledge keepers has not been something that we have been able to do in the district, right? We have tried and we have had moments of partnership, but we haven't had the foundation of a persistent relationship that the Wabanaki Youth and Science uses as its model. And so that is what that phrase means. And I will hopefully be able to explain it in more detail subsequent to the work that the project is doing over the next couple of weeks.
So it's really more of a supplementing or diversification. It's not a D anything, like Western perspectives aren't being removed.
No, they're not being removed. They're being partnered.
So the term is probably inaccurate.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to jump in and say, I think subtractive language like de-Westernizing tends to not play well in a public forum. And I think indeed, as Mark's pointing out, it's not even really accurate. I think additive language, like adding non-Western perspectives, is probably more accurate and probably a better framing for us to have a conversation around. So a very subtle point, but I do think that language is critical in the kind of heightened political environment that we live in today. So I think working on the additive language is probably important. And I do think the goal is important. I'm here at my professional ecology conference, and I just went to a session on natural human systems, right? Couple natural human systems is a big research topic. There are multiple workshops on incorporating traditional ecological knowledge, right? I do think this additive approach is actually in line with what scientists themselves are talking about and doing. So I think it's important work, and I think as a school in the Penobscot River, working with tribes is really exciting, but I think the language is super important in how we phrase things. And I think the additive language is the most accurate language.
Duly noted. Thank you. Thank you both.
The other thing I would add to this, and I would be interested to hear Brian and or Noah if they have something to add on this, is that as long as the additive is what we're talking about, then I think that's great. But I also don't see how the description that you just offered has anything to do with moving away from the scientific method. And are we really moving away from the scientific method?
No.
That doesn't seem to have anything to do with what you just talked about.
No, it's to use Brian's phrase of additive language. So the phrase that Wabanaki Youth and Science uses is braiding, right? So the idea of taking Western practices, which are familiar to us all because it's what we learned in schools, and then weaving them together with the perspectives and the knowledge that the cultural knowledge sharers can offer is the goal. And what that grading looks like is different depending on, you know, what the grade level is of the teacher and what the specific content assignment is of the teacher. But the idea, the verb that they use is graded. So that the method persists. In fact, tomorrow's, the next 2 days of this week are about data and about pulling in data that was part of an EBSCOR grant that focused on environmental DNA. And what does it mean to use environmental DNA in a lesson with kids that is also, that also includes an Indigenous perspective? So.
I mean, I would just add kind of, Mark, to your question that as a practicing scientist, I think we overemphasize a simplistic view of the scientific method in K-12 education to begin with. And there is not a single scientific method that scientists use. And when we communicate that there is, it's a problem. I actually actively and, you know, professionally published papers have critiqued the stereotypical scientific method as being too reductionist and unable to deal with some of the larger global challenges that we face today. So I think there's, you know, going back to the term additive language may sound very political, but it's actually very synergistic. I think there's a lot of reinforcing themes about the conversation and what scientists are thinking about and talking about right now too.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the hypothetico-deductive scientific method, as we think about it, is junk as a or like a very small part of what it's very limiting, and most science is done in different ways. Yeah.
Other thoughts or questions? We're ready to go on to the superintendent report.
Yes, before I jump into what I had for you tonight, Dan Demerit's with us. I know you can't see him. He's over on the other side of the room that the owl's not capturing. But we'll be able to hear him if he speaks to us. And he had asked to be able to talk tonight during public comment, but we passed that too quickly. So I wanted to just give him a chance to add the feedback he has for us around the program that you were going to share with us.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Brian, can you see me okay? We are.
I can see you now. Yeah, the owl is switched, so I see you.
Practicing scientist, I like it. I'll just start by saying, tonight in the Oxfordville School District, they're voting to, on their school budget. Back in June, the 8 communities of the district voted by a 60 to 40% margin to not pass the budget. It included recommendations from 3 of the boards of select persons in those communities, not to act. And I don't have any value. I know the election's happening. I don't have any value judgment on that in terms of what they're going through in terms of getting their school budget approved. But I'll say it makes me grateful for the work that you do and all of you, and the appreciation we have for education here in Orono, in terms of not having to go, you know, not biting our nails and wondering what the outcome of the election will be in a few minutes. So, and a little sympathy to Western Maine. I'm here tonight, and I definitely want to hear your discussion about the Main Street corridor, and I definitely want to hear your discussion about the pickleball courts. But I'm here, and I appreciate the chance to participate, to talk about Orono stops. Back in March, we heard from a parent on the Orono parents group about cars passing her child's buses when they were stopped on the side of the road. Jessica Stevie's bus route. And Jessica now tells us that 336 times last year, in the last academic school year, cars passed her bus while the lights were on. It's a Class E crime. It is, you know, a recipe for disaster every time it happens. And it happened almost 2 times every single school day last year on average, on that one bus route. So after Kayla came forward, Dan Merrill, who's our police chief in Orono, brought it to his attention in the committee meeting, and he immediately responded. And within 2 weeks, we had, as you may recall, we had police officers trailing the buses home, you know, on the routes. And it was part of a detail that included, you know, I think there was 40 something special details. We pulled over 365 people during this special initiative, including 6 people for passing school buses. We I'd say dabbled in education. I think the enforcement initiative was, I think a lot of people noticed it. We dabbled in education, and a couple, you know, we had something on the sign, there was some Facebook posts and things like that. I have some experience particularly in a college town, trying to change behaviors around, incidents, and I'm speaking about the pandemic. And I'm of the opinion that if we really want to make a difference and drive cultural change in Orono around just safety in general, but bus safety in particular, we need to be really intentional about it. I think we need to educate aggressively. I think we need to provide experiences around enforcement, and I think we need to make investments in our infrastructure. So we are going to, on Monday at our council meeting, we are going to get a report from town staff, Keith Merrill, about the collaborations they've been exploring around Orono stops, and we'll have a resolution on our agenda, and I hope that the council will, go work on it together and pass something. And at the end of the month, before, I think we're targeting like Monday, August 26th, an announcement, the kickoff of this initiative, collaborating with the university, and we hope to collaborate with the schools as much as we can on the education piece, but make it clear to people that we have an expectation that in Orono, we're gonna stop for pedestrians, we're gonna stop for school buses, and the Orono Police Department are gonna stop people for speeding and distracted driving. And the timing will coincide with the start of your school year. It'll kick off right before May Hello. And again, I'm hopeful that really don't want it to be about targeting. We are, however, we are the center of inexperienced, but we have the largest concentration of inexperienced drivers of any town in Maine. We're short of just Castine, we're the second youngest town in Maine by, a couple months, they beat us by a couple months. And you consider what the demographics we have with the university and all of the new people we welcome to town. So we really want to be intentional about making it clear to people that this is a town we're gonna expect you to know these laws, 'cause I think some people don't know them. I think we have places where people don't understand, like on Stillwater and off the interstate exits. So we need to put signage up and things like that, but we're here to talk about it, want to be a partner with the schools and the police department. And as we move forward with that, I just want to come and talk to you about it a little bit and just kind of share, I know staff will be reaching out, we'll talking about ways we produce collateral and things like that, ways we can get home to students and families, but I think it's important that we really are intentional about what we intend to do. And I think that's the type of thing that can change behavior over time. So that's what I had for public comment. So thank you for that, and I look forward to the rest of your meeting, or most of the rest of your meeting anyway. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the momentum with the initiative, that it wasn't just, last spring when the problem was identified and the detail and the tickets were given out. I think the beginning of the year is as important to focus on this, to try to, establish behaviors as we're all getting started with the school year, and we have, our college students coming to town. That I think it's great.
Yeah.
And, we can certainly collaborate on communication messages.
Yeah.
So.
I'm interested in, I don't understand why it is that we had, Jessica reports, she's been fantastic. She reports to the community, through social media and stuff. There's been 336 incidents. And why it is that, what we need to do to get, and the number of, enforcement actions, we want those numbers to get closer, we want fewer and fewer incidents to happen. And we want those that do happen to be, opportunities for the police department to pursue the perpetrators, and because that's part of the experience. Again, we don't want to target any one group, but we need to set expectations and really, I think, be intentional about it and make it clear that this is not a community where we're going to tolerate, people unsafe behavior around our crosswalks in our downtown, well, anywhere great, but particularly, where our kids could be walking and getting on buses or riding bikes, so.
Dan, did I just wanna maybe make sure I understand what you said. So on one bus route in the course of a year, the bus driver reported or took note of.
Counted, yeah.
Yeah, right, kept a tally sheet or whatever.
Yep.
336
Yeah,
cars that blew through red stop bus lines.
yeah,
Like, to me, that's one of the cardinal sins of driving. That's you don't do that.
I don't understand it.
She's the driver that does the Stillwater route, but I think that's a big problem area, but it wasn't the only place it happened.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly, because when you said that, I'm like, that can't be
Yeah, it's almost 1.86 times a day, 180-day school year. That's assuming that's the math, but
175.
175.
Can I just ask on this topic? Because I think like signage is like the most important thing for me. And I know, did we ever, was there any discussion about like having a long arm sign, like extension on buses, or I think we don't own
Yeah,
them,
there
right?
was, and you know, Sear has the buses they have, and they are buying those style of swing arms as they replace buses. And so, you know, they'll be coming online, but not necessarily this year.
It's like to hit some cars with those arms.
Jessica says that, you know, it seems like Orono is worse than I don't know what kind of data they have, if it's happenstance or if it's, you know, for the practicing scientists among us, I don't wanna, I love giving Brian a hard time every chance I get. I don't think, I don't know like how they do their data, maybe this is just Jessica's count, but her observance to me today was that, you know, Orono is the worst community they have buses in, and I don't know if it's still why the 4-lane stuff, the highway stuff, the age of our drivers. But I think we all kind of experience that, there's a large, seems to be, a lot of drivers in Orono who are just kind of still figuring stuff out. I've got 2 16-year-old drivers at my house, and you know, they're learning, and I think it's in all of our interest to help them along with that. And I know you can. We got them. We did a fantastic job getting compliance with our testing, our mask mandates, and our vaccination policies at the university because during the pandemic, because of the way we were so intentional about it. We announced what our intentions were, we did a lot of education, we created experiential opportunities, and we had consequences for people. And those things all kind of come together and create a culture, or create an opportunity for behavioral change. And I think we can do the same thing around. Yeah, and some of it's gonna be infrastructure too, and we're talking about Route 2, but we're doing a lot of things that are a lot smaller than Route 2 with traffic calming on Forest Avenue and, you know, things like that, so. I think they all add up and are all gonna be helpful.
And you had also said that Orono's the second youngest, has the second youngest population in the state of Maine. Is that before or after the university?
That includes the university for sure, but yeah, it's like 21 point something years of age and. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think it's great. I really appreciate it. I mean, every teacher knows the first 2 weeks of the year are the most important 2 weeks. And, you know, when you have a new population moving into town, I think it's the same thing. Those first 2 or 3 weeks is set the expectations and set the tone clearly is really important. I've lived in college towns where exactly like the program you're talking about, you know, the first 2 weeks, a lot of students who didn't know the expectations got tickets, and the word gets around pretty darn quickly, and the expectations start to get met. So
Yeah, apparently you can, in the statute, you can issue the citation to whoever the car is registered to. And so if it's a mom or dad's car that goes by a school bus and we have an enforcement opportunity, either it gets reported to the police department, they can track it down that way and then get to the bottom of it, but it's still, and I'm hopeful the university will be a big partner in this because it's important. That they're part of the messaging, so it's not, you know, this college town is targeting students. That's not what I don't think that's not what this is about. So I'm really hopeful that the university helps us spread the word. You know, we're talking about things like when someone comes in to register a car or register a vote, they get a little Orono Stops palm card that says, these are the rules, you know, these things. And it just slowly becomes part of the expectation. VZ seems, for whatever, I mean, it's probably years and years in the making, but the law around here when I moved to Orono was don't speed through VZ. And I would very much like the same sort of, you know, don't pass the school bus in Orono. To be kind of the common, I mean, don't do it anywhere, right, I apologize, you know. But that's kind of what we like to accomplish, so.
I appreciate the partnership with the town and the proactiveness on the part of the town.
Happy to do it, thanks,
Anybody else?
thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and go back with a superintendent report.
Yeah, so before I go to the items on my list, I just want to highlight some staffing updates. Carrie mentioned Allison Woodard, the literacy coach today, so I emailed you all about that. resigned recently, and then I told you we did some shifting to fill the position, and we consequently, after those shifts, have a fifth grade teaching position that we're advertising right now. Have done some initial interviews and are, considering next steps. It was a really, we haven't had the ad out long, so we're trying to see what comes in and consider what the ones we've interviewed as well. Also, recently, ASA special ed teacher Lexi Gingras resigned. I know you received the notice, Katie York, Orno High School English teacher resigned. So I'm bringing you a recommendation for the English vacancy tonight. We still have an ad out for the ASA special ed teacher opening. We've had several ed tech resignations over the past month. And they're, typical for this time of year, actually better than normal for the number of openings we have now compared to previous years. So Lisa is working on filling those openings. We had a custodian resign, and we have an ad out for that. It was an evening OHS custodian. So that's kind of where we are with staffing. We're in that time of year that, particularly with teachers, right before you get to that August 1st date where there's some, contractual rules, most places around notice. Once you get to August 1st, things tend to happen then. And then we're in that time of year now where if we have someone who's under contract, we have to wait, but we'll see what, the applicant polls bring for those positions. Moving down my list of pickleball requests that I wanted to just give the board a chance to kind of all hear what this is and what the question is. I had a request from a community member in the spring as to whether or not we would consider having pickleball lines on the tennis courts for co-use. You can have pickleball lines on tennis courts, kind of like, you have volleyball lines on a basketball court, there are ways to have both. And, my response to the community member was, really, you need to go through our facilities director and athletic director to kind of make this request, and then they can bring it to me if they're supportive of it. And then I also said, funding is kind of I would say a barrier for us to consider that right now, because we were deep into budget and I knew we did not have expendable kind of extra resources to commit to that this year. And so the next I heard was that it was going to the town council in June through their community mini grants request process. And the community member was submitting that to try to eliminate that barrier as to being a barrier for consideration for us being able to do this. And so the council basically kind of kicked the request over to us to say, hey, we received this request before we act on it. They had some discussion, decided to not act on it that night and come to us with that request. So I spoke with Mike, who did some research. I got some information to help me understand things a little more. And the request is that the way it works is on a tennis court, you can have 2 pickleball courts, one on either side of the net. And you can just set up these portable nets in between. And so when you read about how this is done, they have recommendations for what colors to use so the lines are less distracting to tennis players. And so Mike did some research, went to look at ones in BZ. BZ has these set up on their town courts, their Summit UMaine as well. Additionally, he reached out to schools. Hamden Academy has this on their courts. I think they were the only school in the area that responded to him anyway this summer about having those. And, I think in some communities, there are town courts where this happens as opposed to the school courts. And also in some places, folks put down, say, rubber, I think rubber boundary markers. I think that's what our physical education program does, when they play pickleball. When our tennis coach is asked about this, the response is, well, I'd rather not have distracting lines on the court. That was that response. And when I talked to Clint Deshane about this, the new town manager, he was going to connect with Megan Mazzilla to just have her do a little research on it and try to gauge community interest to see what the interest is in the community. I don't think they've done that in any formal way. What Megan said is basically, I'm sure there would be interest if they were available. It's kind of what she said to me. So Mike's recommendation, if we go forward with this, is to do one court as a beginning kind of trial, to have 2 pickleball courts on one of the tennis courts to try this out. Obviously, like any of our facilities, the school use takes priority over community use, right? So you can't schedule our courts for times when we need them, and sometimes our needs change. And so there's always the, you could get bumped if rain happens and we have to reschedule something that wasn't previously on this day, and so we gave it to you, and now the game has to be this day. So there would have to be some signage up about that. I think it's, obviously a very popular sport that people enjoy. I think it is, would be something that in this, downtown area, people would enjoy. You can go to UMaine and use find pickleball courts, and then you can go to BC. So, I think there are perspectives on, multiple sides of this issue, but when it started being talked about at town council, I had board members say, really, I think the board should be able to hear what's happening with this and weigh in. So that's where things are. We've made no commitments. We've, collected some information from, kind of our key stakeholders and we use the courts.
The town council probably should have consulted the board before they discussed it, would have been my point of view. So
That's what we did. We asked our town manager to talk to the school superintendent before we proceed. We got an approach the mini grant, called the residents, asked about it, and in our discussion, we said, we don't own the courts, schools do, so we need to talk to the schools to do that.
So Mike, if I'm understanding you correctly, it sounds like the financing piece is probably gonna be overcomable, right?
Well, I don't know how much the town has to allocate mini grants. Maybe I don't know if there's a limit.
7,500, and I think we're doing it to $750 per mini grant, and I think the request was for $2,000.
Yeah, so I think that there's a range of prices on painting. The community member who brought this forward said they got a quote for $450 per court. Megan said 900, but I don't know if Megan was talking about 2 on 1 court, so that would maybe compute to say you could do 1 tennis court with 2 for $900. I think people who pickleball often have their own nets, and they, who take them around the courts and set them up. They cost about, well, there's a range of those also in price, but anywhere from like $35 to $100 for the nicer ones, I think. So I think what we would potentially do is just paint the lines, and that if people come, they bring their own nets, and use them to play.
Can I ask?
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, sorry. Just about the. I don't play pickleball, but the only time I saw it recently was they had the lines painted where they were just using the same net that was there, and I wonder, and maybe that doesn't work for most people, but I wonder if it would be more accessible to the community if people didn't have to bring their own net. But I know it sounds like you wouldn't fit as many courts on, but I guess that's my
I
question.
think the net is different. The tennis nets are higher, right? And longer. Pickleball nets are not as wide and not as tall.
I guess so. The people that were playing it were just playing on a non-regulation pickleball net, I guess. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's okay.
I mean,
Are you a resident pickleball expert?
I am a resident pickleball
Okay.
instructor.
I see Meredith. keep looking.
Yeah, she organized the league here last spring and the staff.
I mean, the reality is that if there are lines, then, you know, like VC has portable nets they just leave up. And I feel like that would be, because I appreciate your point, Noah, about accessibility, you know, because that is something that, like, when we were playing with students in the spring, it became a barrier when play would move to the university, because if it was inside, only students with passes could access it, and so we were, you know, limiting the pool of accessibility. Getting nets and leaving them up, if it's that popular and people don't have nets and want to play, like, that's an overcomable obstacle. Much more easily than the lines.
Yeah, I think the lines are really the issue.
Can I ask a question though? So are pickleball nets shorter than regular?
Yeah.
So, oh, you can take the regular tennis net and set it off to the side?
No, you don't, you have one net.
Oh, they go
one-
the other way?
Yeah, basically it starts in the back court of a tennis court and goes to, you know, I don't know how, like maybe 5 feet
In front of
the net. So on each side, you can fit in using the back court, a pickleball court on each side of the net on one tennis court area.
So we
I
do,
Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
we do have a policy. I mean, it doesn't strictly apply. It's about use of facilities by people outside the schools, but sets up a pretty clear hierarchy that, as Meredith already said, the schools have absolute first priority, you know, for its own needs and priorities. Second is the town, and third is the community. And you know, and I that's a very common policy across the state of Maine, whether it's you know, in some cases the schools are run by the town council, and you know, there's a school committee. In some cases they're separate, but that same hierarchy exists across most of the state. Like I say, it doesn't exactly apply here because it's not so much about the timing of the use of courts, which that policy would apply. You know, the high school tennis team or middle school PE team or whatever would always have priority, but to me, it's kind of the same conceptual principles. So to the extent that the lines can be done without actually significantly detracting from the experience of the high school tennis team or the PE teams playing tennis, that seems like that policy would indicate that we should put those lines down. And to the extent it's significantly detracting, I think, you know, schools come first principle would apply. Not having taken a trip down to VZ like Mike Archer, I don't have a strong opinion on that. But I don't know. I do like the compromise of doing one tennis court and still having, you know, one tennis court that has no extra lines. That certainly leaves that court open for finals and things like that. And I'm not sure lines are going to make a huge difference to, for example, obviously I know the tennis team when they practice uses all the courts, but it's not going to make a huge difference to PE or probably even to practices. So I would be okay with saying no on the principle that the schools need it, but I kind of lean towards the compromise of going ahead and putting lines down on one of the courts. I think that fits the spirit of the policy of the schools have, you know, first use and first priority, and we're keeping one court that's pure for you know, finals and serious matches. And we're also accommodating the fact that we have taxpayer funding and we're being open to the town as and the community as well. So that strikes me as a nice compromise.
And do we
There's
have
actually
two or three?
Three, right?
There's 3
Yeah.
total courts out back. Yeah. So we'd have 1 of 3 if we did that with pickleball lines, and then 2 that did not. And, you know, my office has a vantage point now of seeing the tennis courts all the time. And, you know, they're like, at the end of the school year, they're busy every afternoon with tennis, right? Well, most, whether or they're all away for an event. And during the summer, I would say it's steady. And, our tennis coaches had a summer program, kind of like summer track out there offering it. But other than that, there's usually 1 or 2 open. It just depends. I mean, it's not like there's a steady stream, and so there's certainly, I think, capacity there. But it's really just a question of, you know, a vantage point someone has about how distracting are the lines, right? Because I think it probably varies by person, opinions on that.
In BZ, the courts themselves are green and the tennis lines are white. and the pickleball lines are blue.
Yeah, when I read online, they recommend that you paint the pickleball lines in the same color palette as the court color, just a slightly lighter shade, so it's less distracting to the tennis eye. So I think that's probably what they were thinking, to kind of make it a dark color rather than a really light color.
I'll weigh in here. I mean, Meredith mentioned that, you know, the tennis coach is opposed to this, which I think is important, at least to me. I did, when I found out that the town was considering this, I actually talked to some current and former high school tennis players. None of whom were supportive of this. They were, to a person, were all opposed on the argument that it would be distracting to them while they were playing. And then third, as someone who's coached a high school sport on a field that has lines for multiple sports, it can be incredibly distracting for both the players. And I'm talking about football here, so it's not tennis, but it's football on a multi-use field with multiple different lines is incredibly distracting for the players. And it can also be distracting if you're trying to coach it. You know, there have been a couple of times where I really can't tell without seriously concentrating, figuring out where the out of bounds line is. Like, how far do we have to go? When I'm trying to figure out what play to call. So I would not be supportive of this, especially that there are other options in the area that people can avail themselves of. I think that would be fine. I don't know if you say that people bring their own nets. I don't know if they can bring their own lines to set down. If they could, then that's totally fine. But I would not want to put lines on even one of our tennis courts.
Our conversation at the comprehensive plan meeting last week was about recreation. And you know, one of the challenges of this community is that we don't have a recreation center for kids to go to. Like we don't, unless kids are participating in organized sports, there's not a lot to offer them. Especially, you know, when you think about students who are in our community, but who are residents of other communities to which they don't have transportation. And who, for whom, you know, walkability is key to being able to, you know, access just things to do. And that was kind of the frame for the Orono Pickleball Club that we have this spring periodically, which was open to students, staff, community members, really just as a place for people to come together and do something that was active, that was embodied, right? Not on a screen, but like in person. And I was struck by how many kids wanted to do it. I was struck by the kids who showed up. I was struck by the way in which it wasn't just one group that was bringing their group. It was kids coming from all different corners. It was kids who, you know, some kids were athletes, some kids weren't athletes. Some parents came. And the conversation at for the comprehensive plan where we landed this last week's meeting was in this place of like the segment of kids who have aged out of the youth sports that Orono Rec organizes needs to be an area of focus for our recreation efforts, because we really are not doing anything for those kids. And to me, this feels like something that we can do, right? Like we don't have public courts, but we have our school courts, we have our schools, right? Like schools are the center of this community. And, you know, I understand that, you know, from a coach's perspective, that this is an obstacle potentially. And, you know, we have PE classes that do pickleball units, who could also take advantage of these courts. I know it's not something that they're asking for, but, I just think that it is something that we could do for the well-being of kids in this community, in addition to the well-being of the community at large, that has a relatively small downside, in that the white of the tennis lines next to the I mean, and I'm only speaking about BZ, next to the blue of the pickleball lines, really is like the difference between them is clear. It's
I agree. I guess I was just gonna go in and I'd say, I mean, I think that it's also a resource for the school, and in a lot of ways, maybe it's I think will be, I mean, given how much the kids seem to like pickleball and PE classes and stuff, I can't imagine that at some point it's going to not be used by the school. And, I play a sport that's almost always on lines with that we have to work with other people's lines. And I think, it's, I think it's, I think it's fine to do that. And I think that the goal is for students to be engaged, and I think it's a good thing.
To Mark's point about coaching, I grew up out of state where, I grew up in New York where multi-use fields were more common. I hated playing soccer on field, on a football field, because of the lines. So I'm sensitive to that. It's from the athlete's standpoint, not necessarily the coach's standpoint, sorry, Mark, but the athlete's standpoint, I hated it. Not having clear lines of, what we were doing.
Well, football players hated it too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they hated it because they were constantly making kind of mistakes in judgment because they were trying to figure out what the lines on, especially if you're on a field that you're not familiar with. If you're practicing on a field all the time, and maybe this gives you're no home tennis, a huge home court advantage, right? Because they'll practice on it, they'll get used to it. But when you go to a field that you're not on, it's got all these different lines and different colors, you're trying to figure stuff out. It's a huge problem, right?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the applications you're talking about are both white lines, soccer and football.
Now, soccer usually yellow if,
Okay.
football are white. Is that what you've seen?
That's what we've seen. The field that we played on, the Coney High School field we played on the state championship football game on, had those lines, but there were also, I believe,
11.
field hockey lines, 11-man football lines, and I think lacrosse lines. There were 5 sets of lines. But even if 2 separate sets of lines, and we played for 2 years at the university, we had different lines because the university is an 11-man football field. Ours were 8-player lines, and there were occasionally times where our receivers would line up out of bounds, at least until we got used to the field. We didn't practice there, we just played there. So it's not, I'm sure it's overcomable, but it's not ideal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it can be a hindrance to play, but I honestly think it's educational and teaching flexible thinking, and is in the goal of spirit of like what we're trying to do with the whole mission of the school. Like, I think it's great to have this on the field. So.
Neither here nor
Okay.
there.
All right. I'm just trying to gauge.
Thank you.
I would just add one last thing. I think I would be more sympathetic to the cause if we didn't have pickleball courts at the university and pickleball courts in BZ, especially at the university. We have them in town. Do we know how many are set up with lines at the university? Because correct me if I'm wrong, all the university tennis courts are beside the New Balance Center, right?
My experience with play there is that there's one that's set up as there's a pickleball net where the tennis set is, so it's not the model that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But I feel like there might be another court that they use too. So one or two courts there. And yes, that is an option, and for the kids we have who don't have, who, for example, are here from, in the fall, before practice starts, those are kids we have who often don't have transportation to other places. So one advantage is the walkability.
I mean, to boil it down into groups, right? There's the high school tennis team, there's high school PE tennis, right? But there's also middle school, high school pickleball, right? There's community tennis, there's community pickleball. I don't know. I just don't think it boils down to a single group. I mean, there's clearly a group that would prefer not to have it, but I don't think they're the only group that's among our stakeholders, right? The PE classes are among our stakeholders, and we have a clear priority for our own stakeholders, but we do have some interest in the community as well. Like I said, I don't have a super strong problem. I don't know if we're going to change any opinions. So I heard 2 no's definite yes, a probably yes, and a no opinion or abstention. So I'm not sure that's a clear consensus to, what's that?
No pressure. No pressure.
Yeah,
Ah,
so
yeah. I tell you what, I think what we can do is I need to connect with Megan to find out a little bit more about her numbers and let her find out from the town, you know, what's possible to begin with. And then I can bring back a recommendation that you can vote on, right? Here's a recommendation. We'll vote on. Does that sound like the right thing to do next meeting?
that sounds like the right next step. Yep.
Okay, this discussion's been helpful. The Main Street corridors discussion is kind of the same kind of topic. There's been discussion that occurred at the town council and in the community around the kind of vision for infrastructure changes along Main Street with the goal of making Orono more walkable, rideable, and have traffic flow kind of more with more ease through the downtown corridor. Did I capture the kind of goals of that project adequately? You can add something later, so when this project started, which I think was several years ago, kind of the original visioning and discussion around this, I was actually on a committee that grew out of the it was the committee that was around walking and biking in Orno. I can't remember the name of that committee. I wasn't on it. Brent was at the time, but I was asked to be on this kind of branch off group about and offer
I
school
was on
perspective.
that
Oh, yeah,
committee.
you were on that committee. That's right. And so we gave some feedback about, you know, especially school traffic and walkers, bikers, and then the committee's work was done, and I think a group went off and kept working on kind of designs and ideas. And then this summer, I think plans were unveiled about what might what a vision would be for this work. And I think what it's working toward is qualifying for either state or federal dollars. I don't remember which.
Both ideally.
Okay, state and federal funds to help support this kind of upgrade. And there are some parts of the design that I saw. Mitch Stone came to see me a few days before the town forum that the town council had. I offered some feedback. I also sent similar feedback to Dan. He reached out to Brian and I. And so the town council presentation was, I think, July 15th. And there is a recording on the town website and the actual plans that you can see. I was out of town when the workshop happened. I know some of our board members attended. But I felt like the board as a whole should probably just take some time to all get up to speed on it. And then decide as a group if you want to, you know, provide any feedback to the town as a group rather than individuals. And, you know, I can bring this back to the board as an agenda item for discussion next meeting after everyone's had a chance, if you haven't had a chance to review the information, so that you know, I can share my perspectives and everyone else can as well, so that we can decide if we want to, you know, provide something to the town from this group or just more informally. So, Brian,
I
do you
would,
have
I
any?
would strongly encourage everybody who hasn't looked at it to take Meredith's advice on this. There are some elements, there's a lot of stuff in there. A fair amount of which would have a pretty direct impact on schools and how students and parents and other things get here and get out. So I would definitely encourage you to take a look at it and come back so that we can discuss it.
I mean, just to
Brian,
boil,
yeah, go ahead.
just to boil down an hour-long discussion to, you know, it goes all the way from Kelly Road all the way up to past the existing rotary up towards the Grove and the Avenue and the student college student apartments up there. So it's a very comprehensive plan. But the place that affects the schools at Westwood, there's no major flow change to car flow, but there's a crosswalk with one of these flashing light signs. And then at Goodrich, there's actually a rotary. So that's probably the really big change, is putting a rotary in at Goodrich.
And the two directions.
Goodrich 2 ways,
Yeah,
right?
Goodrich two directions.
Which is
Right.
even huge. And also
Yeah.
the proposed change on Forest would not directly impact us, but there's a lot of kids that cross there. So I would pay attention to that too, and also to the placement of other crosswalks on Main Street. There's a lot here that I think everybody should take in.
I mean, there's also changes to the traffic flow coming out of downtown Orono, which, some limiting of right turns and things, which certainly going to affect parents driving to school, but may change the traffic intensities too. So, yeah, it requires a deep dive, but it's worth a deep dive. So we can maybe discuss that next time.
One other thing to pay attention to too, as you're doing that, in addition to things that directly impact the school, one additional thing maybe to think about is where kids go after school, particularly some of the younger kids. There are some pretty big changes proposed, for example, on how kids would get from ACE to the library. There could be a real change, and I would pay attention to those as well.
So I can put this as an agenda item for discussion on our next agenda under discussion, and we can talk about it then in the 20.
Meredith?
Dan's waving his hand,
Yeah,
so
sorry.
Brian, Dan's waving his hand. Would you like to recognize?
Oh yeah, Dan, go ahead.
Thanks, sorry. So we're gonna have, and this part of attending today, we're gonna have I think our meeting on the 26th, we're only meeting twice a month now, so I have all this time to come to school board meetings, which is awesome. But we're gonna have a meeting on the 26th. We're really gonna dive into what this process started before. And most, if not all of us, were on the council. So we really, with our new town manager, Clint DeShan, we really want to get our arms around what the process is, what the timeline is, and figure out a way to really identify what the community's priorities are for this project, because there's been a run of planning committees over time and the consultants that were hired a couple of years ago to do this project, this current, planning process, taking that stuff into account, and they've given us some concepts. But I don't think we've had a conversation with the community like we did when we started the town manager search, for example. I think we had a pretty decent start to that search by having a conversation with the community, what the priorities are. And I don't think we've done that yet. I think the hearings that we had one in February, and then we had this one in July, we looked at some concepts that the consultant put together based on what they thought the town might want, but we haven't done a good job of really identifying the community's concerns. We definitely heard some concerns about some of the specific elements of some of the concepts that make us think, well, we've identified a couple non-starters, in terms of right turns on Pine Street, stuff like that. But I think I'm hopeful at the August 26th meeting. I wanted to talk just to let you know that we're going to do that, and I think that's really going to help us decide what the next steps are for the community and how we involve, work with you, with this board, and to increase awareness and really consider the thing. So I don't think we're not gonna ask the consultant to give us a plan back in the next month, without first talking about what the timeline is gonna be, what the process is and things like that. So I wanted to share, kind of stepping back a little bit so we can better assess.
So what would the timing of feedback, if the board decided they wanted to provide some feedback, what would the timing, what timing would be good for that?
I think the council has to have its discussion about what we want to do going, how we want to shape the process going forward. So I would say we don't need anything until after the 26th. We're gonna have the 26th, we'll talk, and then we're gonna have a timeline in terms of, when we want to go back to the community with more conversation, when we're gonna ask the consultant. We're gonna ask the consultant to give us like all the raw feedback they collected. So we have, that material, that information. But we don't need anything in August. I'd like to invite people to be aware of the August meeting, attend the August meeting if they'd like to, and be a part of that discussion. But that's kind of where we're at. So we don't need anything particularly we don't need anything formal. It just won't be timely. We won't be ready to consider it
So does the board want to wait and see what comes of the 26th and talk in the first September meeting about this or the next meeting?
Or would it be, I almost feel like it'd still be better for us to discuss it on the 20th, and that could just be passed on to the town on the 26th.
That can work. I mean, we'll consider it, obviously, whenever you wanna suggest stuff, so.
I mean,
But
I
also- I'm sorry, go ahead, Brian.
yeah, I mean, I don't assume, given the current, you know, more positive relationships between the town and the schools, that it's a one-shot opportunity for the schools to have input. But, you know, and maybe the board will discuss it, and we're just as diverse as the community is in the set of opinions, and that's maybe not a super important thing to communicate. Or maybe the board will discuss and will say, well, as it impacts the schools, all 5 school board members and the administration strongly feel this, and that would be, feels like that wouldn't hurt to communicate that as soon as we could too. So
I would agree with that, and I also think that, to your point, that it's not a one and done opportunity, I would hope not anyway, to weigh in, that it would probably be good for us to do this on our next meeting. Offer what, if anything, we want to offer, and then maybe revisit that after the council has their meeting and they've made some decisions, or at least some map for going forward, and maybe we can take things back up again if necessary. So I'm supportive of what Brian is suggesting.
so it sounds like we should bring it back on the 20th.
That means everybody has to stare at like very small drawings, so get a magnifying glass out if you have bad eyes like me, and then watch the video of the meeting.
I have a big set in my office that Mitch left me if you want to come and sit in our conference room and look at them.
That actually would probably be useful, because staring at the PDFs it's brutal.
Yeah, it's the same as the PDFs. You just see it in sections. So you just like, it's a 11 by 17 prints.
You can, but even at that, like the legends are very difficult to figure out and stuff, so. And don't make the mistake of trying to do it.
No, that would be terrible.
That's good, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so the next item, I just wanted to let you know, we're working on the strategic plan published document. Rachel is actually our graphic artist for this and is doing a great job. And we're just working on finishing some sections that needed to be worked on, i.e. the data section and the kind of summary graphic. And either the next meeting, that's my goal, to bring you back something the next meeting just to see, or it might be the September meeting before we have a final for you to kind of look at before we go to print. So we're making good progress on that. I just want to let you know that we have been working on that this summer, and it's looking really nice.
Thank you.
And finally, I have a facilities update that I just wanted to share with you. We have a lot going on this summer. As someone mentioned, several people, Derek Sinclair, our new facilities maintenance transportation director, started on July 29th and really hit the ground running. He gave me a nice update on all the projects yesterday. So he's really worked hard in, 8 days to get up to speed, make contacts with lots of people, and be able to kind of get his finger on the pulse of the status of all the projects. So he told me that the English wing here at the high school that's being redone, renovated, is anticipated to be completed end of next week. Same for the ASA grade 1 and 2 bathroom renovation. The ASA grade 1 and 2 HVAC project is anticipated to be complete maybe by the end of this week. But there's still some painting to be done that kind of, when they installed the units, they painted right around it to patch their carpentry work, but it left kind of like a white box on a whatever color wall that was, like a pink wall, a purple wall, and it's all over the place in those rooms, like what the colors are. So Derek's having some of his team go in and kind of paint that entire wall an accent color of the duck white that we use. It's like, it's a very neutral color, just to kind of get it to where it's ready for a school year. The high school gym floor refinish, stripping, painting, putting in the cores for volleyball has started. and it's projected to finish the week of the 19th. The red garage project that UTC is building, kind of a section of that I would say is probably about 40% of that, of one end of that building, maybe a little less, maybe 35%. As a lab space for the UTC satellite program, that has started. However, we've had a really hard time getting fire alarm and sprinkler contractors to come in and tell us what we need to do, because the town said, I think accurately, we did need to sprinkle and alarm that section. And so we're waiting on a quote for that. And so they won't be able to get in that space right away, which is fine. The instructor can do other things without that space, but we're working on it. The speed table that's going in right behind the middle school gym, that's kind of that traffic calming speed table like out on Forest, is going in before school starts. And the ASA crosswalk right out in front of the front door is being repainted because it had faded quite a bit and people were maybe not seeing it as well as they needed to. So in addition to all of that, it's just getting everything ready for a new school year and putting together furniture that comes in and all of that. So lots happening, but all the projects are really going well. And I just really appreciate Derek coming in and getting up to speed so quickly on everything. So he's got some great ideas and I think, you know, is going to really be a good fit for us in that position. One thing that I just wanted to explain, I had something on the agenda about ASA generators. I thought I was optimistic, hoping that we could have a contract to approve tonight on that, but I got bad news that the contract I thought was going to work. They can't meet our timeline. So we're still seeking to see if we can find a contractor who can meet our timeline for using ESSER leftover money for that. If we aren't able to get that, then we have a couple of other ideas, but we're working on trying to use some of our remaining ESSER money that was freed up when the HVAC project ended up costing less than what we at one time were hearing it was going to cost. So next meeting, I'll tell you what my plan is for that, because it has to be figured out by next meeting. I think that's all that I had in my report. Do you have any questions on any of that? And I also would like to thank Sam and Richard, but you know, Sam carried the heavy weight of kind of connecting with custodians during the time in between Bill's departure. Bill was helping some too, but Sam was kind of the boots on the ground here, helping to guide the work this summer. So thank you, Sam, for that. And Richard. Okay.
Okay, so we don't have any discussion items. We'll move on to staff hires. We do have a teacher hire, so I would make a motion to go into executive session under 1 MRSA 4056A, appointment of personnel. Is there a second?
A second.
We'll take a roll call vote. Noah,
Hi.
Kevin,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
I also vote aye, carries 5-0. Noah, you and I should switch over to the executive session link.
We're gonna just go across the hall.
We can leave the company here.
Everybody ready to go back there?
Yeah.
All right, Meredith, do you have a nomination for the position?
Yes, I nominate David Miller for the position of OHS English teacher.
I would make a motion to authorize the superintendent to extend a contract offer to David Miller for the English teacher position. Is there a second?
One second.
Any discussion? We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Noah,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries 5-0. Next up, we have the co-curricular nominations. I would make a motion to approve the slate of co-curriculars as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
And just, it's short, so to read it quickly, JV boys soccer, Jason Lewis, middle school assistant cross country, Lori Gott, and high school drama musical, Molly Webster, the music part of the musical, Molly Webster. I already took a motion, right? So any discussion? We'll go ahead and vote. Noah,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries 5-0. Next up, we have approval of school physician for 2024-2025. That's a state requirement. Meredith, do you have a nomination?
Yes, I'm pleased to let you know that Dr. Diane Callenbreen is willing to continue in this role. And so we appreciate her willingness to do so.
Great. As Meredith noted, she's ongoing. I wasn't going to call an executive session. Would anybody like an executive session? Seeing none, I would make a motion to go ahead and appoint Dr. Diane Callenbreen as the school physician for the 2024-25 year. Is there a second?
Second.
I would just say thank you. It's a volunteer position and greatly appreciate her volunteering and time and expertise. Any other discussion?
This is year what now? This has been a long time.
Ever since I've been here, so I'm not sure how long she did it before I arrived.
I don't remember.
It's my 8th year.
I don't either.
At least since Jasper was in the 4th grade, because we had opportunity to interact with her. And so that's puts it up at 10 years at least. So, yep.
Many thanks to her.
Yes.
Okay, we'll go ahead and vote. Noah,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries 5-0. We normally do have an executive session for the emergency plan. Let me just ask, does anybody have any, if there's any questions, we need to go into executive session. Does anybody have any questions?
I reviewed it and I have no questions or edits or suggestions or anything.
Meredith, was there anything you wanted to say in executive session?
Well, the thing I can say, just publicly is, we have been working on updating our reunification plans, and those aren't quite ready yet, but we've changed just a little bit in the plan to kind of reflect current language, but there's a few things we haven't ironed out. So we'll actually probably be bringing in a request for you to update the plan once that is completely finalized. So maybe it might be best to wait and go into executive session when that part is done, but we're going to roll out this part to start the year. And when that part is finished, then we'll bring it back for an update.
Unless I missed it, I don't think there's a request for an executive session, so I'll just go to a motion. I would motion to approve the emergency response plan for 2024-25 as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Guessing there's no discussion, needs So we'll go ahead and vote. Noah,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
I also vote aye, carries 5-0.
I'd also like to just thank Sam, Lisa Earhart, and Dan Patterson have been the ones to update our plan this summer and to work you know, quite a bit on our reunification plan. So they've been working hard on that. Thank you to all of them.
Agreed, thank you. Subcommittee reports, it's August, most of them haven't met. Anybody have an update on subcommittees? Okay, most of them aren't gonna kick in till September. Any other business? Any requests for future agenda items? Any public comment?
I think the public
Alright.
has gone.
Okay, our next meeting will be Tuesday, August 20th. At the regular time, 6 o'clock in the OHS OMS library. Any requests for information and follow-up? I would motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and vote. Noah,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
I also vote aye, carries 5-0. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Just occurred to me that you guys switched the owl while we were off.
Yeah.
Only looking at me or to. Oh, it's on, okay, it's on.
No, and it would have been Dan started on.
Okay, gotcha.
Remembered how.